Part 5. Igvaj ran. Back in the guild, he had understood to some extent that Morn was a better adventurer than himself, but Igvaj was unwilling to acknowledge that fact. However, when he personally witnessed the commanding figure of Morn's majestic riding beast, the ancient, legendary monster known as the Wise King of the Forest, he had no choice but to accept it. Anyone who could tame such a creature by strength alone was clearly far beyond mithril rank. As he realized that what they had discussed in that room was true, Igvaj's heart filled with anger. "I don't know what country you're from, but don't get in my way. I can give you information if you want, but in exchange, go stand aside and wait." To Igvaj, it was as though someone had trespassed in his territory. He and his group had trained hard to fulfill their dreams, had slowly climbed the ranks after countless close brushes with death. It was only natural that they would be unhappy when somebody cut in all of a sudden and jumped several ranks. He would pull Morn down if he had the chance. He would ruin Morn's reputation with false rumors. That was what Igvaj had in mind when he had chosen to set out with Morn. This was also why when Morn's black-clad companion showed up and declared she was going to kill Igvaj and his group, he could fall back with no hesitation at all. Though he was afraid, he still moved faster than anyone else. He was driven by the malicious desire to spread bad news about Morn about Ains to the guild. "Serves you right, I'll make it back alive for sure, and then I'll disclose everything about you to the world." He did not know how Morn was connected to the vampire. However, he was sure he could steer the rumors in that direction. Though he knew that terrible weapon might scythe down on him at any time, though he knew his life might be in danger, Igvaj laughed, unable to suppress the emotions surging up in his heart. He did not care about his comrades at all. No, if they became decoys that let him live on, so much the better. "I will reach the top. I will attain the Orichalcum, then the Adamantite rank, and become a renowned hero." There was no need for anybody strong beside himself. His companions were all stepping stones on his climb to the summit. He would be the true hero who saved the world, like the 13 heroes of the past. This was the dream Igvaj had ever since he had heard the saga of the 13 heroes in his youth from a bard in his village. But then, there was a man who was going to stand in the way of his dreams, was going to surpass him and his team. Worse, he was doing it as a part-time job. That was unforgivable. He ran and he ran and he ran. The fact that Igvaj could run at top speed through the forest without his face turning red or panting was proof that he was indeed a mithril-ranked adventurer. However, ripples coursed through Igvaj's heart. Big ones. "Where is this place? I circled around because I was afraid they would have set up an ambush near the horses." Igvaj felt that this was right, and his sense of direction told him that much. However, his sixth sense said otherwise. He would not get lost even if this was his first time in any particular forest. However, for some reason, he was still uncertain of his location. "I must be imaging things," he thought. Though, this did not feel like his imagination at all. However reluctant, he had to acknowledge that this was real. "Am I lost?" WooshOurWorldAudio.com. But how could a forest stalker like myself get lost? Igvaj's vocation was one which specialized in outdoor movement. In a sense, the woods were like his backyard. However, a strange, unsettling feeling filled him. This forest now seemed like the gaping maw of some vast carnivorous beast. "It's just like a maze." Unease and anxiety welled up inside, as a change came over the forest which should have been completely familiar to him. And then, he heard the sound of quiet rustling. Igvaj recalled the black-clad executioner from just now, and jerked his head back to look at the source of the sound. He saw a child's head poking out from behind a tree. That child was a dark elf, closely related to the elves, who were humanoids which lived in the depths of the forest. Why is there a dark elf here? He had heard that the large settlements of the dark elves were located in the great forests to the south, where no man had set foot. Dark elves were the sort who live far away from civilized areas. In that respect, they were different from the forest elves, who traded with humanity. There was something strange about this dark elf, who was also a child. It filled Igvaj's heart with doubt. Just then, the child nervously stepped forward. It's a girl. She was dressed in female attire, and the frightened look on her delicate, beautiful face aroused Igvaj's sadistic desires. Although he wondered if this girl had been sent by Morn, the two of them had completely different attitudes, and so he laughed the idea off as impossible. More importantly, if this girl was a dark elf that lived in this forest, she would surely know a safe route out of it. In addition, if that black-armored woman caught up to him, he could use the girl as a hostage. With that in mind, Igvaj decided to try and get the girl to obey him, and so he took a step forward. Oi! He intentionally pitched his voice low, filling it with notes of menace, and startled the dark elf girl into taking a step back. I'm sorry. Igvaj chuckled coldly as he saw the nervous look on her face. He was confident that his plan would work. No need to be sorry. There's something I want to ask you, so come over here. About that. I'm sorry. A question mark seemed to appear over Igvaj's head as he wondered why she was apologizing again. However, the ebony staff in the dark elf girl's hand had already swung towards him. The vegetation turned to snares, which securely bound Igvaj's entire body. He trembled in shock. How could a mithril-ranked adventurer like himself fail to stop the magic of a brat like her? Even after struggling with all his might, the plants refused to budge. As anxiety and panic filled his heart, Igvaj raised his voice and shouted, You little bitch. If you don't let me go, I'll kill you. Oi! The dark elf nervously lowered her head and advanced toward Igvaj. It was then that Igvaj realized her outfit was quite exceptional. Both her clothes and armor were masterfully made, of the sort which Igvaj himself would not be able to acquire. In addition, her eyes, the memory of something an elf friend of his had once said, surfaced hazily in his mind. However, before the memory could fully take shape, a shadow fell across his face. The girl forcefully swung her staff. Though her face still looked afraid, there was no emotion in her eyes. She did not feel anything about what she was about to do to Igvaj. It was as though her fearful attitude was just an act she had been directed to put on. He superimposed the form of the girl before him over that of the black-armored woman from just now. Wait a minute. What are you trying to? Albedo arrived just as Mare's staff fell on the man's head. His helmet deformed under the impact of the staff and the skull below caved in, while his eyeballs popped free of his head from the force of the tremendous impact. His head was thoroughly smashed, like a watermelon during a Suikawari game at the beach in summer. Thanks for your hard work. About that, Albedo-sama, it's over. Is this fine? Albedo removed her helmet, and smiled to Mare as he looked up nervously to her. It was perfect. Granted, it was a somewhat messy way of killing him, but it's fine. Ain-sama will surely praise you for this. Really? The delighted dark elf looked to the corpse, and then Albedo asked, How about the other one? Well, he's been taken care of. I dragged the corpse behind a tree. Is that so? Beautifully done. Then, Mare, can you help me bring the corpses back to Nazaruk? I got it. Albedo smiled once more to the smiling boy who was giggling as he held his blood-stained staff. He was such an honest boy. Still, he would do well to be more open.